Please welcome to the podium Chairman Shuster.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here this morning. My staff put some notes in front of me, but unlike the president last night, I'm going completely off script. And I'll start by saying that I thought the president did a fantastic job last night. We were high-fiving each other, and the whole speech was great, but of course, the folks in this room and myself, he talked about infrastructure again. And as I like to tell people, this is the first president that I can find that said in his inaugural address, he used the word infrastructure. So this president's committed to it. I know the folks in this room are committed to it. Thank you for having me here. I should have started off by saying that first. Thanks for being here. My secretary, DOT secretary, is here. I heard Senator Leslie Richards is sitting right back there. Leslie, raise your hand. Make sure. There she is. I want to make sure that I heard that the senator mentioned his DOT secretary a couple of times, so I figured I better do the same. I got some projects in my district that need attention paid to. Leslie and I are on different sides of the political aisle, but when it comes to transportation, there's not much daylight between us. It's about building America's infrastructure, and we have tremendous needs out there. Again, the president last night said it. He said it again and again. I've been down to the White House twice in the last 2 weeks. Had small meetings with the president. And of course, I bring up infrastructure every chance I get. Again, this president, he's a builder. He knows what it takes to get a project done. There's a great example right down the Pennsylvania Avenue, the old post office building. The Trump Hotel, Trump organization got the bid, did it before time was to be completed and under budget. So that's the kind of thing this president's going to get done. And let me just focus on what we need to do to move forward with infrastructure. The president said $1 trillion. It's not going to be $1 trillion coming out of Washington, D.C. There obviously has to be more money coming out of Washington, D.C. And how we get there, let me first say something about where these other dollars are coming from. There are billions and billions of dollars out there today, private sector dollars, that are going to be spent. The Secretary and I just talked about 2 pipeline projects, not the Dakota pipeline, not the Keystone pipeline, the Constitution pipeline and the Atlantic Sunrise. Right, Secretary? Sometimes I get that name wrong. But there are 2 pipelines in Pennsylvania, $4 billion of private investment. And the Corps of Engineers and other government agencies are holding up these projects. If the Corps signs off and we get a couple other people to in agreement, we're talking about $4 billion of private investment just in Pennsylvania into a couple other states. That can be done. I was down in Florida. There's a $1.5 billion project that's waiting on the Corps to sign off. There's a $2 billion project out in California waiting to get not federal dollars, but TIFIA loan, not for all of it, for a piece of it, a portion of it. So there are billions and billions of dollars of private sector money, and the president's talking about those things. And these are the kinds of things I bring up to him every single chance I get, and his policy team. He has a great policy team. I can't tell you how pleased I am that Secretary Chow is Secretary of Transportation Chow. She's outstanding. When the White House were talking to me about what's the criteria for a good Secretary of Transportation, for any secretary, it's number 1, have the experience to run something big, and she's done that. She ran the Labor Department for 8 years under President Bush. Know the transportation issues, know the issues of the department, and she's steeped in transportation, from her family-owned and maritime business to her work as a Deputy Secretary of Transportation under first President Bush, and third, being politically smart. And she has got all those things. She's got all those qualifications. Now, some of us are getting a little frustrated because for her and her team, you need 11 players on the football field. She's got about 3 on the football. She's supposed to be the coach, but she's playing quarterback, she's blocking, she's tackling, she's doing it all. So we got to make sure we get the rest of the administrators and assistant secretaries on board so that we can move forward with programs and projects that we need to do. And let me just tell you this. The president, there's been lists out there, 50 mega projects, and I've said to the folks at the White House, tell me that's not the president's list, because 50 projects aren't going to get 535 members of Congress, 50 governors, and 50 legislative bodies out there to back this plan. So I've said over and over and over, it's not 50, it should be something like 500. And we should look at every state and say, what are the projects that are going to bring a state along? Have to affect probably 2/3 of a state. Now, I got a couple, Madam Secretary, in Pennsylvania. 81 is one of those. And those of you who live in New York, Maryland, Virginia, down to Tennessee, 81 is a project that's extremely important to the health of this economy. It needs to go to 2 more lanes, not just in Pennsylvania, but that whole span. So when we're making lists of projects, we need to go to our state DOT departments. I need to go to Secretary Richards and say, okay, what are the 7, 8, 10 projects that can bring all 18 members of the House and our 2 senators together to say, this is important for Pennsylvania, this is important for America. And that's what we have to do. We have to get on board. Again, anytime you have an opportunity to talk to the Secretary Chow or any of these other folks that are in policy positions, it's got to be a 50-state solution. It's got to be all 50 states on the playing field doing what we have to do. And some of you in this room have done just that. Talked to your legislators, brought them along, whether it was the folks in that state that passed an increase in revenue on themselves, or whether you got the state legislature to do that. But it's working together. It's identifying those projects to bring legislators to the table to say, we need to get the revenue. Now, how do we get the revenue? It's a $1 trillion question, but I think I've solved part of it. But how do we get that revenue? And there's going to have to come from a lot of different sources. Everybody talks about repatriation, the user fees, different cut spending here, move it there. It's going to take an array of those types of things here in Washington. There's no one silver bullet. I think everything has to be on the table. And I'm just proud to say, of all the partisanship in Washington, D.C., I think one of the things that brings people together, I know one of the things that brings people together is infrastructure. Whether it's Delaware, Pennsylvania, California, Florida, Maine, we all need to see that investment. So how we get those dollars, I can't stand up here and tell you, except I can say it's going to be an all-the-above solution. And it's going to take each and every one of you in this room working with this administration, working with your delegation in Congress to come up with those solutions to move the legislature, to move the national legislature, the House and the Senate, to address the problem of, there is a problem too, of funding. So look, I can talk about a lot of things we're going to do in the committee, but the biggest thing is it's going to be an infrastructure package, and it will cover everything, rail, transit, highways, aviation, pipelines. There's going to even be some things that aren't in my jurisdiction that are going to probably make it into that bill. With our infrastructure, whether it's the electric grid or broadband to rural areas, making sure we're developing that. I think we have to have a big, broad bill. Again, look, I'm in the transportation business. So anybody who wants to hitch a ride on my piece of legislation to move forward, I welcome all to get on board. But again, you being here in Washington is extremely important. Making sure I know that you're going to make some Hill visits, talking to your members. We have a couple of roundtables with former DOT, state DOT folks that have gone through the process of how they get the revenue increases. So they're going to be talking especially to those folks on my side of the aisle, because sometimes we're a little bit more stubborn. But I think that everybody knows that it has to be an investment in our infrastructure. The president, again, he hit the nail on the head last night in a lot of areas, but when it comes to infrastructure, he's there, he knows it, and all of those of us in the room know it. So again, take your message to the Hill, and I urge you again, every time you talk to somebody in the administration, I know self-interest is your own state, but tell them you need 49 other states on board for us to get this done. So again, I appreciate you being here. I'm keeping my message short. I got a lot to do today. We have a couple of hearings and a lot of folks that want to talk about infrastructure. So again, thank you all for having me here. Thanks for being here. Secretary Richards, I'll see you soon, sooner than you may want me to be. But again, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.